data, and cyber resilience create measurable value in asset heavy operations. Power generation, among other large conglomerates such as manufacturing and infra, sits at the intersection of uptime, safety, regulatory compliance, and cost pressure. The question isn't whether to digitize, but where digital delivers the fastest and safest ROI. In this episode, I am joined by Sapan Harish Talwar, CIO of SR Power, to talk about what works on the ground, the one problem that only eased after IT and OT started working as one team, how to build a trusted data foundation, and the criteria used to decide when a use case deserves AI versus a simpler fix. Welcome, Sapan. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Yashwin. My pleasure it is to join this forum. Thanks
Wonderful.
to you and Observe Now for letting me share my perspective around this very, very interesting topic.
Thank you so much, Sapan. So let's just dive in. Large conglomerates, as I just mentioned, Sapan, such as power, manufacturing, infrastructure companies, face a massive balancing act. They must keep the lights on, protect workers, follow government laws, and ensure affordability. So, where do you think can digital technology create the most measurable business value in this unique mix of uptime, safety, regulatory compliance, and cost pressure environment?
Sure, Yash. Yeah, one I want to mention to start with, whatever views I share are my personal views, right? Considering the exposure and experience I've gained over last 28 years staying in the industry. And when I share my responses, it will be more around one of those industries which I am responsible for, being responsible for multiple industries within a large conglomerate. So I'll share that perspective. Now, going to your question, I think we are at a very great intersection. Considering my role here of which is aligned with the chief digital and information officer, where all the three major pillars, so to say, which is digitization or digital in one format, then the technology, which includes both IT and OT technologies, as well as the cyber security, which brings a resilience perspective. This The industry becomes very, very critical, considering that there are a lot of friction which exists, specifically when we have to manage the physical operations aligned with the business decisions, because the situation on the ground is very different while the decision is made in the boardroom, right, of something to be done. So, however, having said that, I think the critical aspects of when this alignment can work together should address the four key areas in my mind. Without saying, the first is uptime, right? The industry has to work, the outcome or the output has to be there, right? Now, having said that, the uptime has to say, very, very important, both from the humanity perspective as well as regulatory perspective, is safety. Safety of individuals who are working on the ground, physical operations, right? And last but not the least, it has to be the cost, because the more we can save, the more we can raise, or the more revenue and the profit we can generate. And every business is done for profit, right? So I think these are the key areas which should be addressed while you're thinking of a strategy around creating a measurable business value in these industries, right? Now, just going a deep dive into few of these areas which I mentioned. Very important, and most important, rather, not very, even most important, is to understand the predictive intelligence, having predictive intelligence, so that we can understand if there are going to be any downtimes which we can protect in advance. And importantly, we should not be doing maintenance on the calendar basis, which has been a standard thing since many years. However, the condition based maintenance is the key here, because that reduces unplanned outages. And we have, I don't want to put a number, however, it could be around more than 20%, which is huge, which will also extend the asset life, because in the end, the machinery which is working on the ground has its own life, and each component of that machinery has its own life. So ensuring that we are doing a condition-based maintenance is very, very important, and also trying to have some solution, and wherein AI can bring a lot of options here, is having predictive maintenance, wherein we can really predict not just by looking at the machinery, but by the various metrics which we are regularly looking at. So this is one major area. Also considering that when we talk about IT and OT, it shouldn't work in silos. Each one should feed information to the other so that we can understand the requirements at both sides. Systems like SCADA, DCS, sensors, which are running more on the OT side, must also integrate very closely with the IT network or IT systems, more specifically the ERPs, which collates the data and which gives us more better metrics of what's happening in the environment. Lastly, there is also how much AI are we bringing in? Because since everyone today is talking about AI since last couple of years, specifically generative AI now has given birth to AI agents and agentic AI. Can we really use AI to a certain extent to optimize further? Is the question here. And yes, according to me, yes, there are various means and tools available today where we can actually have forecasting done. We can also have optimization done around these systems, both OT and IT, and which can together improve the efficiency. More importantly, as I mentioned to start with, if we are able to create value, that value which is actually killing the loop between operational events and business outcomes, that is what we need in today's environment. Once we are doing that, I think we'll be able to really create a measurable business value, and which is the need of the hour and looked upon by the board members any which ways.
Sure, sure. Wonderful, Sapan. You also raised a very important point when you said that IT and OT need to break silos and work together. So, in just picking up from there, it is really crucial for teams to work, in a very collaborative manner within an organization for achieving overall success. Can you talk about, one operational issue, challenge, or problem that actually became easier to solve when data, IT, and OT teams began working together? And more importantly, what made that collaboration work? Because teams have their own issues, challenges, and it's really difficult for people to work together in a collaborative manner. So, your experience on this area?
Sure, and I must admit this is the most challenging area in today's time because of the simple reason that the IT team and OT team see their infrastructure and technology from very different lenses, right? And so, very important was coming to a question to show them the common data layer. What is the commonality between two, and make them understand it is something which is very easy to understand and very easy to actually work together on. So here, if you think about IT at a very basic level, asset is what we work on, right? Every system is an asset, right? And every system generates some codes or logs, right? And there are failure modes in every system, which needs to be predicted, which needs to be understood. The challenge remains that because everyone is seeing their own sides in silos, they're never going to talk to each other. However, the how we can resolve this by showcasing that hey, OT and IT both have assets, both have event codes, both have logs generated, and both can give physically some bit of signals or sense to each one of you that there is something wrong. However, the point is for OT engineers to understand and be part of IT teams, and vice versa for IT engineers to part of industrial teams so that they can understand the challenges on the other side. That's what we tried, and this was a successful experiment, I must admit, in terms of establishing a joint committee, establishing something wherein the accountability is not of single team. So there's no problem, so say naming a person, a team, however, working together to solve a problem. And in that sense, in fact, the incentives were also aligned. right, to that level that it is something which is a group or a team which wins and team which loses the battle. So everyone was walking towards a common cause, right, and which enabled us to identify root cause very quickly, because there was no blame game. There was something which is and it really dropped from weeks to hours, not even days. I cannot put forward the incident because it was very close to being an IP of the company. But the point remains that the scenario which could have actually taken weeks, as I mentioned, in probably 5 months down before today, could be worked upon very quickly, where the everyone was the owner, and everyone considering that they had knowledge and understanding of the other side alongside their own side, while they were the champions of their own side, whether it's the IT team or the OT team. However, coming together, discussing, and quickly trying out few options of how to resolve or troubleshoot, and then pinpoint what the issue is. Instead of saying IT and OT, this is a collective problem and let's solve it collectively, really made the difference. And that collaboration, if I may put it in one word, really made sure that while there are two different systems, it can still be sorted and we can still reach the conclusion of what's the root cause and come out with a solution. So I think that really is the need of the hour, working together, not blaming each other, but trying to find a solution in a cohesive way.
Right. And you could also show to your management tangible benefits arising out of such a collaboration.
Absolutely, because in the end, management seeks, of course, one has to communicate to the management if there is an issue and if it is causing a production loss, right? As simple as that. However, in past, it has been that we have never reached the root cause too sooner as we were able to. So that made a whole difference of a management getting more of trust on this team and the approach that we were able to identify the root cause, and management supported very well on that to really plug the gap which was identified, and so that it could not repeat. The similar situation wasn't there, because generally what happens when as a human psyche, when we play the blame game, everyone is confused, right? What is the real problem? But this time we knew the real problem, and we could propose the right solution, and which gave confidence back to the management.
Wonderful. Great. Let's talk about data now, Sapan, which I feel is the lifeblood for any organization, especially in today's time and age. A large enterprise receives data from multiple sources, from plants, equipment, enterprise systems. But it's really tough for most enterprises to turn into decision. And while data is called the new oil, if you're not able to derive actionable insights from it, I don't think it's of any use. So, as a technology leader, what has been your approach to building a trusted, usable data foundation? How should CIOs go about it?
I would say that everyone probably understands that data is the key,
Yeah.
right? However, building that fabric, knitting that every data element together is the need of the hour, which probably requires focus, I would say. So the whole important thing is that everyone understands and knows, but can we focus enough to actually bring that fabric together so that each data layer is one visible, right? It is right from each and every sensor which is working in the OT environment, right, to each and every log which is generated by an IT environment. Can we really get information about all of that in a cohesive way? Can we correlate that? I think that becomes very important, because as we understand, there are different tool sets available on the OT side versus IT side, right? And getting information from both sides and eventually making sense out of it itself is a challenging issue today. However, building a unified data layer with segmentation on the IT and OT, converging IT and OT, and eventually implementing data quality at the edge, because we get a lot of garbage as well, right? Systems generate anything and everything. So important thing is that if we can validate the real data we can validate the timestamp, we can validate the what is sensor level, what is gateway level, and we can really see that all the garbage is put aside, and then make sense out of whatever is left over. Well, it will definitely require right tools. Also, it will require the right frame of mind and sense for the engineers who are working on monitoring that kind of data to come out with the real thing. So eventually, we need to enable self-service, which is a human service, embedding into the systems. And that's where I think most of the companies miss the entire thing, because we are too dependent on tools. We the thought process is that we have spent X million on this, so we just need to monitor the tool. However, that's not the case. Humans play still the most important role in this entire gamut of closing the loop, ensuring that they understand the system, ensuring they understand the data foundation from where the data is actually coming, and then correlating. So I believe having the mindset of openness and having those guardrails under which the data is actually streamed out and understood by a human is key here. And once we are able to really reach there, I think this problem will definitely go off in my
Okay,
mind.
okay, sure. Sapan, you rightly said that humans are now over depending on tools and technologies, because whenever I talk to CIOs, no, in my conversations, everybody is either planning to implement an AI solution or is in the middle of that implementation. So, I mean, what are your thoughts here? I mean, does one actually need AI for every business case? I mean, it seems to me an overkill. As a technology leader, how do you decide whether a use case deserves AI, predictive analytics, automation, or simply a better process? I mean, can you share the criteria your team uses before investing into a technology or a tool or a solution? And on what basis do you come to the conclusion that we would need AI for this, or probably just a predictive analytics for this, RPA, whatever?
Got it. No, this is very pertinent in today's time, because as I mentioned to start with also, we are going after AI without even understanding our environment, right? And probably uh, it is this, in most cases the scenario is because we've been told to do that. Like, hey, everyone is doing AI, why aren't you doing? Right? I think that's the mindset. And if you see from the people or the board members or senior who are saying that, they are also not wrong in some sense, because everyone wants to adopt. However, it is a very, I would say, a peculiar case of responsibility of what to adopt, when to adopt, for what to adopt, right? I think the right timing, the right solution, as well as the right use case solving is most important here. So, uh, firstly and foremostly, if I go by that chain of pieces which you mentioned, if I talk about Gen AI, or agentic AI, I think in my mind, it can solve a problem where you have unstructured data involved, because structured data and human can understand, right? You can still build something around it. But when you talk about maintenance logs, you talk about inspection reports, vendor documents, everything is so much flowing onto you, right? Or wherever there is a possibility that a natural language which AI can easily understand, create the output, and troubleshoot, or help us troubleshooting those kind of problems. I think probably I feel that AI is the need of the hour. You cannot do without it.
Sure.
However, when you have something which is time series, which has sensors, data, we need to forecast failures, we need to optimize, then you really need predictive analytics, where analytics come into picture, because data is there, the structure is there, you just need to derive the value out of it. So for that, you a human may not be enough with the speed of his eyes or brain, his or her. However, predictive analytics solutions can really help, because they can we can create rule based policies. We can really create some triggers which can really provide that information very fast and quickly. I think that's what the predictive analytics done. I think you mentioned automation, right, as one
Right.
of the areas. So again, automation, it's something not nothing new. We've been doing automation algorithms as well as automation tasks since many years now. I think whenever there is something which is repetitive in nature. Whenever there is something which is rule-based task, I think automation plays an important role. In certain cases, some of the compliance-related requirements also automation can solve, because you're doing and going back and doing that redundant things again and again. Some of the alerts, escalated escalations can be done via automation. So I think very basic tasks, which definitely can be managed and handled by automation. You don't need AI or you don't need analytics for that. Lastly, eventually, again, going back to the human thing, you need to have the right process, right? Now, everything cannot be solved by right process, but wherever you have a human involved and a human has to follow a process, then or human have to follow certain steps where there are manual handoffs, where there are broken processes. That's what you need to first fix the process. So I would take it in a different hierarchy. I would start with fixing the process, then building in automation, then whatever is left over in terms of the systems data which is coming from all sides, then bringing predictive analytics layer, and last but not the least, identify the use cases which cannot be solved from these areas of work, then bring in AI agents, to start with Gen AI and then AI agents to solve the problem. So that's how I believe we can really solve the problem. And in the end, it is, if you cannot solve the problem by these 4 or 5 areas of work, then you need something. Probably the next wave is coming. I would say. I don't know what and when, but yeah. So that's my clear understanding of what and how we should approach the current
Sure.
state.
Sure. No, this definitely helps, Sapan. Moving on, predictive maintenance is a familiar Industry 4.0 use case. I mean, most CIOs have already implemented Industry 4.0 on the shop floor. But beyond preventing equipment failures, how do you measure whether these initiatives genuinely improve availability, efficiency, or cost?
This is the tough one, I would say, because you're talking about systems and predictive maintenance. Mostly, initiatives fail to demonstrate the value. Mostly, that's what my experience is. However, if you are really able to have accurate models put in, which are more so aligned with the systems rather than the business outcomes, because when you start thinking of business outcomes, it creates a problem. So rather focus on the accuracy of the model which you have implemented around the maintenance. I think that's where one can really pick up and make sure that we can really have this piece covered, right? Now, from the as an example, maybe some of the metrics I would think of is availability, right? The foremost thing is unplanned outage, right? Can we really reduce the unplanned outage? If there is an outage, can we really reduce the mean time between failure, MTBF? As we all know, this is a major metric, right? So if we can really compare the pre and post predictive maintenance periods for same asset class, right,
Yeah.
then we can come out with some relevant information of how we can really prevent the unplanned outage and reduce MTBF. That's what I have done, and that's what has really helped, right? The second area which we can really think of is efficiency, right? Wherein let's assume a boiler is running, which has a heat rate, right? Or where there is a capacity factor, right? Or there is a start time reduction. Can we really upgrade the start time? We can reduce the start time, because the sooner the system gets started, the machine gets started, the sooner it heats the water, the better the boiler will perform, right? So if we can really correlate the alerts with the performance data, which is while in operations, right? I think that's what will give us a better idea of how we can really improve the efficiency, right? So this is another factor. Safety, as I mentioned to start with, seems is one of the critical aspects. So basically, again, mapping and counting on the safety incidents during the maintenance, right? Was there any incident? Were we actually violating any of the regulatory requirements, right? What are the audit findings when the audit was performed as an entire process? I think correlating everything of this and then coming and kind of understanding both mostly as a team and collaborating together would definitely reduce the predictive maintenance efforts overall. Last but not the least, I think costing plays a major role because in many cases one should have some of the spare parts. You cannot assume that the parts would never fail, right? It's a machinery in the end. So, can we really have some emergency repair avoidance by having certain parts, but we cannot have many parts because that's a cost. So it has to be a very balanced approach as we kind of think about this aspect of spare parts. So that becomes an important thing. So from our perspective, we have been running some control pilots on comparable assets, right? Two similar boilers and one predictive maintenance cycle. How how each of them performs? Can we isolate some of the technology impacts? And are there any other variables in terms of fuel or loading profiles or quality of the entire equipment? What is, and then come out with the differentiation and then accordingly set up some kind of a benchmark and ensure that that benchmark is then implemented on all sides of an entire plant. So that has really helped us reduce the overall impact of predictive maintenance overall and ensuring that we are able to really also increase efficiency while we reduce the cost, which
Okay.
becomes a very important metric uh, for a controller or a CFO, right?
Right. Yeah. Sure. Sure. Great. Let me come back to the topic of AI, Sapan. As Gen AI percolates within enterprises across verticals, there has to be a balance to be struck between man and machine. So, in the context of plant engineers, maintenance teams, and business leaders, where do you feel AI can make an impact and what should remain human led?
Yeah, I think AI is your favorite topic as well, Yash.
It's
You're
everybody's
coming back
favorite
to
topic these days. Sapan.
coming back to AI again and again.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, definitely we have technology to leverage, and why shouldn't we? That's as simple as that. So I think yeah, that's a very amazing question you have put through because uh, using or leveraging AI is a choice, but is it really a choice today, or we are forced to move it or use it is also a big point. So if I cut it down, I would say that in my mind, the highest value is derived by augmenting or human augmenting AI. Neither human can really give us the best performance, probably in today's time, where there are solutions available which can help us better in whatever ways, in multiple ways, nor AI together can replace humans. That's what my belief is, right? So my definition of AI is actually not artificial AI; it is augmented AI, augmented intelligence, right? Because it is about augmenting human expertise with systems or solutions which are being developed again by humans, right? I think we all understand that eventually AI, which started way back in 1943, by the way, that's what when I was going through the historical aspect of when AI birth of neural networks came into picture, right? That was 1943. From there, since today, it has been human who is evolving in his brain and trying to get AI kind of solution better and better, right? And hence I call it augmented intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, right? So if I talk about some of the examples, like for example, plant engineers, right? Some of the use cases wherein we can really use Gen AI largely
Yeah.
is querying the historical production cycles, right? We know that there is historical data available, right? Can we really query through natural language usage of what is the kind of information we are retrieving from historical production cycles, which can help us in today's running the environment in a better efficient, right? Then also uh, generate diagnostic insights. Why a human should spend hours trying to diagnose the problem or some of the niggle rather than use data lakes and try to generate that diagnostic insight, which can then be correlated and come out with the solution sooner, which will lead to human taking a decision eventually as an augmented intelligence to actually make some operational changes in the process or in the equipment to so that we can be in a better efficient way run that environment, right? That's something the plant engineers can do. From the maintenance team perspective, generating automatic work orders from the failure patterns. Because in the end, as I also mentioned earlier, machine is due to fail, right? Or the system, the entire mechanical part of system is going to fail, whichever manufacturing unit or plant or mining you're running, whatever, right? So if we can derive some kind of patterns from that failure, and we can study those patterns, which can be done by AI easily, I think we can come out with some kind of contextual information which can help us in troubleshooting and trying to solve the problem in a very, you could say, sooner or sooner than later in terms of faster rather. And we don't need to judge. We have data information in front of us. So we just make those decisions based on the information available. I think you mentioned business leaders also, right?
That's right.
So yeah, eventually those are the people who have to take decision, right? And their decision is basis the information made available to them. So if we can summarize the plant performance trends, explain why behind every niggle or every metric, I think the board will be able to understand, or the senior leaders will be able to understand better. And rather than dashboards, uh, we can show them real data coming out of GenAI solutions, which is that, okay, we are not spending time on creating PPTs, but we are gathering data and we are showcasing you the live data real time basis, which can help you make decisions. So, and eventually it is communicating the right person, the right information, what he or she understands. A CFO would understand numbers. A business leader would understand the performance and the attached number to it, right? So in the end, if we can break these down basis, the kind of leader you are presenting to, I think that would help really differentiate between what we could do without AI and now what we could do using AI as an overall. And foremost thing is deriving the right use cases, because if we don't have the right use cases, then going back to your previous question and previous answer, AI is not used everywhere, right? So
Right.
you have to know your AI use cases, and you have to implement AI to solve that use case, and don't go in either direction and expand yourself. Just focus on that and you'll be able to come out with the right solution. So and eventually augmentation, human in the loop stays as important as ever it was. So we should not give that perception to ourselves or anyone else that this is AI giving you a result. AI will only give what is said, it is said to be given, right? Based on the data it is presented. But it is human intelligence or human in the loop which will carve out the reality of what information has been forced back to them, and how much and what is to be shared by the whether it's plant engineers, business leaders, or anyone else, so that they can make sense out of it. As simple as
Okay.
that.
Sure, sure. So where are you on your AI journey, Sapan? Have you just started, or is your AI strategy mature? What would you say?
I would say that it's been we have in some companies we have derived the use cases already, right? And we have started kind of maybe I would say discovering tools which could help us in those use cases. In a couple of scenarios, we have identified and we have run the pilots as well already, and we have started deriving some results out of it already. So it's every so the maturity level of every company is different today, and as I mentioned, everyone doesn't need AI. So wherever we believe that AI can help us and there's a use case ready, we go to market and we try to find the right available solution, and then POC it and then see if it's really solving the problem. So yeah, I would say that we are at different levels in different companies, or the kind of different, so to say, uh, industries. Of course, everything comes under heavy industry, but there are multiple other companies which operate in their own way, and So AI is being used to a certain level, and there are many more use cases which we have identified, which can probably be solved through AI as a problem.
Sure, sure. Sapan, we discussed the importance of breaking silos between IT and OT. But there's also a challenge when you do this. I mean, if you digitize, the more you digitize, the more surface area you increase to hackers. So, what's
Exactly.
the approach to securing the convergence of AI, IT and OT? I mean, how do you strike the balance between visibility and cybersecurity?
Yeah, coming and loving the cybersecurity domain from last many years, and focusing on that part for longer part of my career. Definitely, that is in top of my mind, right? Because I've got I've worked with CIOs in past, and now having that role and donning that hat, definitely give had to have I have to think differently, right? However, I cannot lose my cybersecurity exposure and hat. So that is my top priority any which ways, right? The important point is being in a dual role or multiple wearing multiple hats give me that accountability as well as complete freeness to actually implement the right solution and the right process, right? And so some of the areas which I've been already focusing on and continue to focus is asset visibility. As simple as until we don't know our surface area, we cannot protect it. That's a basic line or the guideline of every CISO should think around, and I'm sure everyone thinks or most people think around that. So visibility of our inventory, both on IT and OT side, right? Now, since IT and OT have to talk to each other, we should have visibility on both the sides, right? Segmentation, that's the most important thing because we all know that a problem starting from IT can disrupt OT environment and hence can disrupt production. Not only can make the IT environment down, but something emerging from this side can really create havoc there. So if there is segmentation, we can contain the attack if any might happen, right, in any of the environment. And the zoning between IT and OT becomes very, very important, right? DMZs have been implemented since long, supervisory controls, process improvements, all those in close conduits between IT and OT are implemented. That's what the need of the hour, right? So segmentation, which we have been trying to evade in the IT environment themselves, I have not seen many companies actually doing real segmentation until zero trust emerged, and then zero trust uh, basic prerequisite was really segmenting, right? And then deploying that zero trust boundary into each of those layers. So that's the next thing. Are we really adopting zero trust at each level, at each asset level, in each domain, whether it's networks, whether it's systems, whether it's servers, whether it's identity, all of those zero trust should be adopted. And eventually, while we know our assets, we have deployed solutions, we are segmented, we have to monitor it continuously, right? And for that, uh, as we have evolved already, behavioral anomaly detection becomes the most important thing because that's where we get to understand more rather than signature based. And this is a truth which has been now known to everyone, and I'm sure all the solutions follow this approach, right? And now, since we are monitoring, however, we all also understand that vulnerabilities keep propping up, right? You have systems, you have solutions, so there would be vulnerabilities. So we should have a risk-based approach on identifying and remediating vulnerabilities. That becomes again very, very important. And next, very important thing is managing, monitoring, and the third-party controls because in many environments you have outsourced your operations, you have outsourced it to solution providers, you have outsourced physical bodies working in your environment. Have we really given the right access? Have we deployed RBAC at the system as well as the human level? Actually, it should be ABAC now at the system level, which is attribute based access controls, right? That should be implemented. And last but not the least, when all of this is done, we have to have specific OT incident response. IT, we all are probably matured enough. We have processes, we have tested, hopefully, but same methodology, on the same lines has to be implemented on the OT side as well, because IT playbooks exist, but can those be directly fed into OT? No. You have to have a focused approach to create OT playbooks, and we should actually make sure the right set of response process is implemented and tested in the OT environment. So I think uh, the CISO's role is already evolving in these areas, specifically when you have manufacturing units where IT and OT both exist. We used to have OT engineers or OT managers or plant managers, but I think CISO now plays a very critical role, translating, understanding both the environments and translating the challenges, and trying to have unified teams which could actually understand IT and OT threats, trying to make sure we have the right solution put into that. So all of this, I would say, together would knit that particular framework where we can protect both IT and OT while they are converging, while we have a higher or a bigger digital landscape to control, but we can definitely control it is what I'm confident about rather.
Sure, sure. No, we've had a great discussion, Sapan, and really amazing insights from your end. We've reached the end of this session. So, one final question from my end to you, Sapan. For CIOs and CDIOs in asset heavy industries, what is the one most important technology decision that they should make if they were beginning their transformation journey today? From your experience, what is that one important tech decision that you would recommend them?
Very good question, Yash, and thank you for asking that. I think I was really wanting to give that perspective. While whatever I spoke till now is well understood by the CIOs and CDIOs and CISOs, because it's all technology and everyone breathes technology and now breathing AI in the same sense. But I think most of us are missing that. And the answer to this question is, which I've been myself focusing since long time, because of the kind of verticals or businesses I worked around, is actually focus on data governance, because data is the key. What are we trying to protect? Either it's our intellectual property, which is data, either it's our personal employees' data, or our financial data. Eventually, whatever we are trying to protect and is on data is data. The same data is also being generated from the systems which we work on, whether it's IT system and OT system, right? So in the end, data governance is a one key major factor which everyone should be thinking around. Whether you have to uh, automate, you have to get AI tool or anything into your environment. Data remains the core of everything. And second point, which alongside data, is organizational design. How are you designing your organization so that both IT and OT, as I mentioned towards the start in one of the answers, is IT and OT teams working in a collaborative way, right? So if we have the IT OT governance, the team collaboration, the data understood, and then all those technologies which I referred to and mentioned in my responses working together, I think that's where is the key. And that is the major decision one should take, that we should, and that's what will protect the companies in a better way than the rest of the ones. Because as we also know, and we also keep saying, it's not about when you will be breached, it is like you be breached or not, when you will be breached, right? So if we are taking the right decisions, we understand our data, we understand our systems, we understand the teams, people who work on the systems, and we work in a collaborative way, monitoring everything and taking due actions whenever we see something not so good happening, then we can protect and make sure that our production impact is nil or near to nil, if not nil, and we are doing better in our jobs in that case if we continue to do and focus on that stuff, basically.
Great. This was amazing, Sapan. Thanks a ton for a very candid, practical session. The big takeaways start with the business outcome, not the technology. Build a clean, governed data layer before scaling AI, and treat IT OT security as a shared operating model, not a one time project. Thanks again, Sapan, for sharing those insights. And viewers, if you missed any part, you can catch the replay. Until our next LinkedIn Live, keep the focus on value, safety, and resilience. Everybody have a great evening ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yashwin. You have a great day too. Bye-bye. Take care.